So I'm just rabbiting on at the moment. I haven't taken any notes. This is just stream of consciousness, and I apologise if the odd swear word comes out of my mouth. It just happens sometimes. I try not to swear, but sometimes it happens, so apologies if that does happen. A stray swear word, it just comes out randomly. Yeah, I was just talking about mental health, how other people sometimes react to mental health problems in a way that isn't favourable, and can end up making you feel degraded and humiliated. And I think people don't realise how toxic it is and how this can build up over time when you're constantly being told off. People are constantly blaming you. You could tell that you're a problem, and this erodes your sense of self over many, many years. And the other issue, by the way, is codependency. That's going to be not something that I'm going to talk about here, but it feeds in too much. But it feeds into this codependency thing, which is basically where, because say if you have a disability, not just mental health, it can be anything. You have a disability, obviously that can make you more dependent on other people, because it does naturally mean that you're limited in what you can do with any disability, and that can then create a codependency, which means you become more dependent on others than say you would if you weren't disabled. Now, there's nothing wrong with being dependent or needing your needs met from other people. Society makes it out like that's a problem, like, oh, you should be able to manage, everyone should be self-sufficient, everyone should be able to do X, Y, Z on their own. Reality is that's not the case, and we all, every single person, whether you're disabled or not, is interdependent, right? We're all dependent on others to some extent, okay? But if you're disabled, obviously you are going to be a bit more dependent, say again, your average person, on other people getting your needs met, particularly if you're housebound. That even increases. But this can actually become toxic potentially, where you are essentially enmeshed, because you need other people to fulfil your needs, because you literally can't fulfil your own needs. And that's fine if that other person doesn't degrade or humiliate you, then that can be fine. It's like, it depends how it's done, okay? If someone doesn't degrade or humiliate you and does it in a respectful way, which doesn't humiliate your mental health, but the problems arise when the other party starts to take your issues personally and starts to, in a sense, create a sense of guilt, or like mental health, what I call mental health shaming, or like mental health gaslighting, I suppose, which can be very hurtful. This can be things like people might say, like, after all I've done for you, like, you're not allowed to express your own opinions, you're not allowed to, because then they will say things like, oh, after all I've done for you, and now you're creating more problems and stuff like that. Okay, this can be very hurtful and degrading, because it's not really, it's not, because you are essentially dependent on them, and you don't choose to be dependent on them, because you're disabled, you literally do rely on others, and it's not because you want to rely on them. If you're not choosing, you literally have no choice. Like, if you weren't disabled and you do all these things for yourself like any other person, and you wouldn't face this toxic enmeshment, okay? But because you're disabled, you rely on others to get your needs met, and this can unfortunately create a situation where your mental health essentially is weaponised. I use the word weaponised, where someone starts to shout at you, tell you off for your mental health, basically, and that's not good, because you shouldn't ever be told off or shouted at for your mental health. People do, because they get frustrated, because mental health, let's face it, is difficult, and it's difficult for others as well. But really, it's when this happens repeatedly, it is very toxic. And this is where social services come in. Social services should support people in a respectful and helpful way, which isn't degrading. It should be done via social services, because they're not emotionally involved in your life. So it creates this kind of distance which reduces the likelihood of toxicity. I say reduces the likelihood, it doesn't completely eliminate the likelihood, because it really does depend on who is providing that support, and not all support workers or social workers are respectful individuals. I've experienced very toxic situations from social workers and support workers of very extreme ableism. But in an ideal world, it would be done by a respectful social worker or support worker who provides the support in a non-judgmental, non-critical way, but this is very seldom done. So this increases the chances of toxic codependent enmeshment, which is really, really toxic. Yeah, I use that word a lot, but it's very, very toxic, and can erode the person's sense of selfhood over time, and can result in mental health guilt, mental health shaming, mental health gaslighting. And I'd say that this can actually be even harder to deal with than the mental health problem. OCD, anxieties, whatever mental health problem you have, it's hard enough to deal with on its own terms, but you can deal with it. It's hard, but you can deal with it. But when other people's reactions to it, behaviours, and ableism is what is actually can be even worse than the mental health problem itself. It doesn't have to be that way, but too often it is, and it's deeply, deeply hurtful, because it ends up eroding your sense of self, making you feel like you aren't a proper person, basically, and that you should be able to control yourself. But obviously you can't choose, because it's not your fault. You've got mental health problems. Why you should not be shouted at or told off or made to feel like crap just because you've got a mental health problem. It's really out of order, but this is what happens. And social services, the fact that there's hardly any social care in this country is part of the problem, because it, like I said, it increases this toxic enmeshment situation. It's just a little stream of consciousness thing. But yeah, anyway, what I was saying is this year is obviously going to be a very stressful year for me, with the stuff that needs to be done OCD wise. It's going to be very difficult. So I think I'm going to have to end this video now, but I want to say that I have got a book I'm going to be reading at some point called A Horse Called Now. I've only just ordered the book. I'm looking forward to receiving it, because it's a mindfulness book. It's aimed at kids, but it's meant to be very good. I've heard it already on YouTube because someone did a reading, and I thought I'll have to get that book. So when it does arrive, it might not be till a couple of weeks actually, and then probably won't be until a bit of time after that, because I have to allow it to decontaminate and all that. But again, I do plan on reading it to you. Okay, so thank you for watching.